In the headlines on this Thursday evening, the government decides to dispatch patrol planes and a ship in the search and rescue operation for a Korean-operated trawler that sank off Russia's eastern coast. The death toll continues to rise, with dozens still missing. Korea's real gross national income edges up in the third quarter, but at its slowest rate of growth in more than 2 years. The United States is once again rattled with a grand jury decision, this time in New York, not to indict a white police officer connected to the death of an unarmed black male. We have these and more coming right up. Hello and welcome everyone. It's Thursday, December 4th here in Korea. I'm Na Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. Well, the bodies of 8 more victims in the sinking of a Korean fishing vessel off Russia's far eastern coast were recovered on Thursday.
That's right. That's what the ship's owners, Hajo Industries, said in a statement today. It says 20 people are now confirmed dead in the disaster, with 33 still missing. Now, the company, citing communications records between the sunken Arirang vessel and other ships, said the boat appears to have lost balance after water flooded in and blocked the drain. As search and rescue operations continue in the area, South Korea will send 2 maritime surveillance aircraft and 1 5,000-ton patrol ship to the site. Seoul's foreign ministry said the ship will depart Friday afternoon and that it will take about 9 days for it to arrive on the scene. In other news, will the 6-party nuclear disarmament talks resume? That's a question that's been on repeat ever since the talks were suspended back in 2008. South Korea says it is willing to talk again as long as North Korea is serious. Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
South Korea is ready to return to the 6-party nuclear talks. All North Korea has to do is show that it's serious about giving up its nuclear weapons. Following talks with its Russian counterpart in Moscow on Wednesday, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Jung-guk said the 5 parties, including Russia and China, agree on the need for some preconditions for the multilateral dialogue. That, however, doesn't mean the North must take specific steps before returning to the negotiating table. Hwang said that beginning the talks without North Korea showing a sincere attitude about denuclearization would be meaningless. He added Pyongyang must show a willingness to engage in a constructive dialogue. The multilateral denuclearization talks, involving the 2 Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, haven't been held since late 2008. But a recent flurry of diplomatic activity among the 6 parties has fueled hopes of getting the ball rolling again. Washington's new special representative for North Korea policy, Sung Kim, will meet with Hwang in Seoul on Friday as part of a 3-nation trip that also takes him to Japan and China. This while North Korean officials and American security experts are reportedly arranging a meeting in Singapore next month. Diplomatic sources say North Korea's chief nuclear negotiator Lee Yong-ho and former U.S. nuclear envoy Stephen Bosworth are among the likely attendees. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And now on to the joint railway project involving the 2 Koreas and Russia. As for who will gain majority control over the management of that project, a report out of Seoul says it will be Russia. Citing government officials and industry sources, Yonhap News says Korea would hold a 49% stake with Russia, making up a majority 51%. An official in the South Korean consortium said they were working to make sure they have at least partial control over the project to ensure stability. The 3-way trade deal involves delivering coal from the Russian station of Kasan to North Korean port of Najin on a 54-kilometer railway and then to the South Korean port city of Pohang by sea. The South Korean consortium is expected to ink a formal contract with Russia next year.
The recent hacking attack related to a parody movie prompted many people to wonder if this is a news that should be considered seriously. But the investigation into this cyber attack is still on, And at one point, there was a claim that the film was going to officially name North Korea as the hacker. But apparently, the studio is not going to jump into any conclusions just yet. Our Kwan So-wa has the latest on this story.
The cyber attack on Sony Pictures has turned into an international case of whodunit, but many accusing fingers have been pointing squarely in North Korea's direction. Raising those suspicions a notch, popular tech blog Recode reported Wednesday that Sony will name North Korea as the source of the hacking attack. Highly destructive malware knocked out the company's computer systems for over a week and leaked a massive amount of data. Citing two sources close to the probe, the blog said details are being finalized and an official announcement will come very soon. But what came soon after that was a report by the Associated Press that said Sony has not yet reached any conclusions. The news agency says it received a text message from a Sony spokesperson who said the investigation is ongoing and that Recode's report was not accurate. North Korea is suspected in the hacking attack as it wants to stop Sony from releasing its comedy film called The Interview that depicts two American journalists sent to the north to assassinate leader Kim Jong-un. That movie, however, was not one of 5 DVD screeners leaked online. But a number of security experts doubt the hacker group that identified itself as the Guardians of Peace has something to do with North Korea, despite earlier reports that Korean code was found inside the hacker's malware. Some even speculate the attack may have been carried out by a disgruntled employee. Kwan So-wa, Arirang News.
More on North Korea and its hacking capabilities. So what do we know about it? An American expert on the regime says Pyongyang has an army of hackers totaling in the tens of thousands. And some believe cyber defense measures should be included in the Korea-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty. For more on this story, we have our Kim Yeon-bin.
Speaking at a cyber defense meeting in Washington, specialist in Northeast Asian affairs at Johns Hopkins University, Alexander Manzarov pointed out that North Korea has continuously enhanced its cyber hacking capabilities over the past decade. He emphasized that Pyongyang is now capable of penetrating both Seoul and Washington's internet networks, with an army of hackers totaling in the thousands.
Now, 10 years later, the South Koreans believe it's almost 6,000, but probably it's twice as much.
In order to better deal with Pyongyang's cyber threats, some experts believe defense measures should be included in the Korea-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty, similar to a NATO agreement that calls for collective defense against cyber attacks.
The NATO member states agreed to that a large-scale cyber attack against a member country could be considered an attack on the entire alliance.
North Korea has also been suspected of taking part in Iran's recent hacking of 50 government and private firms across 16 nations, as Korea was the second most targeted country behind U.S.
Knowing what level of access they have into over 50 different companies around the world tells us what they could do if they wanted to in terms of controlling critical infrastructure, our physical world, transportation, you name it. So,
experts say Seoul will need to invest more in upgrade its cyber defense system to the level of Israel's cyber Iron Dome if it wants to become less vulnerable to North Korea's virtual online war. Kim Yeon-bin, Arirang News.
Let's shift our focus a little differently towards peace. President Park Geun-hye has made preparations for unification of the two Koreas a priority of her presidency. And this year, she even launched a special committee dedicated to looking into that matter. Where do the average Koreans stand on this subject? Well, a recent survey suggests that a majority of the South Korean people are behind the drive, saying unification of the peninsula is needed. Our Kim Min-ji delves into the numbers.
Unification of the two Koreas would be a bonanza, words spoken by the South Korean president. But what do average South Koreans think? Believe it or not, 7 in 10 people say we need unification. This according to a survey by the Seoul-based Korea Institute for National Unification on 1,000 people nationwide. Then why do they think unification is needed? Nearly 40% of respondents said it was because North and South Koreans belong to the same race. Eliminating the threat of war came in second, followed by reuniting families separated by the Korean War and becoming an advanced nation. While not many South Koreans see unification as a benefit to themselves as an individual, they believe that it would be a boon for the country as a whole. If and when the two Koreas do become one, the respondents said their top agenda should be working to achieve greater economic growth. Experts say the GDP of a unified Korea could reach $70,000 by 2050, the second highest among G20 nations. But South Koreans were not as willing to move to the north to work or get married, showing that more needs to be done to make them feel more comfortable about their neighbors to the north. And with the report showing that public sentiment is largely behind the idea of unification, an official at the institute said the government needs to focus on really improving inter-Korean relations and creating an environment for a peaceful unification. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Angry protests over the Michael Brown case is still ongoing, and while this is happening, a similar grand jury decision in the U.S. not to indict a white police officer in connection with the killing of an unarmed black man in New York is adding fuel to that fire. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
If you do not remove yourself from the roadway, you will be placed under arrest.
There were 30 arrests in Manhattan throughout night as protesters marched the city, just as others did in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and even in San Francisco.
The system isn't really built to help anybody out. They're not indicting anybody.
People have to know that people care and that it's not okay.
This after a grand jury in New York announced that it would not be indicting a white NYPD officer in the death of an unarmed black man. The victim, Eric Garner, was stopped by Officer Daniel Pantaleo on suspicion of selling cigarettes illegally on Staten Island in July. In video of the incident, the officer is seen using a chokehold on Garner, a technique forbidden under the NYPD's patrol manual. Minutes later, Garner was dead of a heart attack. The decision in New York comes less than 2 weeks after a grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri decided not to indict Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of an unarmed black teen, Michael Brown. President Obama called for change.
I'm not interested in talk, I'm interested in action, and I am absolutely committed as President of the United States to making sure that we have a country in which everybody believes in the core principle that we are equal under the law.
Just as with the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, the Department of Justice said it plans to open an investigation to determine whether Eric Garner's civil rights were violated. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And now shifting to the economic front, while the overall Korean economy continues on the path to a moderate recovery, the growth in income is not keeping pace. The figure did rise in the third quarter, but it was at its slowest pace in well over 2 years. Hwang Ji-hye has more.
Korea has posted its slowest growth in income in 2.5 years. The Bank of Korea says the national income edged up 0.3% in real terms in the third quarter from the previous one, the lowest expansion since the first quarter of 2012. The central bank attributes the slower growth to worsening trade conditions, with export prices falling faster than import prices.
Prices of outbound shipments dropped, while prices of IT products, which are one of Korea's major export items, fell.
But experts say next quarter income figures could expand at a faster pace than the third quarter due to falling global oil prices.
Oil prices dropped a lot in the fourth quarter, so trade conditions are likely to improve in the October to December period.
Overall economic activities remain on a recovery track as the country's gross domestic product grew 0.9% in the July to September period from the previous quarter.
The third quarter figure matches an estimate made in late October and stands similar to the roughly 1% growth posted a year earlier. It also marks an improvement from 0.5% growth in the second quarter. From a year earlier, however, the Korean economy grew 3.2% last quarter, slowing from 3.5% growth in the second quarter. Key indicators also point to a still sluggish economy, with facility investments down 0.5% on quarter and exports falling more than 2% in the third quarter from a quarter earlier. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
So right now, Korea might not be facing the best trade conditions, but what about next year? At least 3 free trade agreements are expected to take effect in 2015, and with that, a local institute says next year is going to be a banner year for Korean exports. Kim Ji-yeon has our next story.
Korean exports are expected to exceed an all-time high of $600 billion next year, a 4.3% increase from this year. That's according to the Institute for International Trade. In its latest report, it says automobile exports in particular will increase by nearly 4% to $51.5 billion, boosted by free trade agreements with Colombia, Australia, and Canada that are expected to take effect in 2015. Exports of semiconductors are forecast to grow by 6% for similar reasons.
Albeit gradually, Korean exports are expected to record positive growth next year as trade conditions improve and because there will be more working days compared to this year.
However, some experts say the 4.3% increase in exports won't be enough to boost the Korean economy.
Korea can be satisfied with a less than 5% growth projected for next year. The rate of increase used to be in the double digits and is merely a quarter of that now. But the dependence on exports is still high.
The researcher adds the Korean government has to do more to mitigate external risks that could affect exports. He says Korea needs to diversify its export routes and rely less on the Chinese market, which currently makes up a quarter of Korea's total exports.
The Chinese economy is forecast to head into slow growth, less than the previously projected 7%, as the Chinese government is less and less able to control and regulate its market economy compared to previous years.
The researcher says additional interest rate cuts by the Bank of Korea are imperative to keep the local currency appreciating against the weakening Japanese yen. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Foreign direct investment is one source of creating jobs. As such, the Korean government is making all-out efforts to boost foreign investment, which is where the nation's 8 free economic zones come in. Song Ji-san reports.
To attract more foreign direct investment, Korea has established 8 free economic zones over the past dozen years, with their total area amounting to 330 square kilometers, or half the size of Singapore. This one in Incheon was the first to be set up in 2003 and is the biggest of the 8. Foreign investors can receive tax exemptions and incentives when setting up their businesses in these free economic zones. BMW is one of many enjoying the benefits since building its first driving center in Asia at Incheon.
It took years to choose the location through multiple feasibility tests, and we are fully satisfied with our decision. It's close to the capital and the metropolitan area. It's close to the airport, which enables us to provide maintenance service when our clients fly out.
Korea seeks to become the center of East Asia in terms of investment by attracting more FDI in the 8 free economic zones. But further deregulation is needed to fight rising competition within the region, as China and Taiwan also launched similar free trade zones last year.
FDI coming into Korea, if you go back to 2003, it's gone up by about a factor of 3. So it's good progress, roughly on a par with other countries in Asia, but good, solid progress. The competition is there, though. I mean, I think that's key. Korea is not alone in doing this.
The researcher also points out that inefficiencies in labor and financial markets are slowing things down, while Korea's infrastructure and high level of education stand out as advantages compared to its global competitors. 송지선, Arirang News.
Last-minute touches are being put on a plant in Korea's southern port city of Busan. In less than a month, this special facility will provide almost 50,000 tons of drinking water for the city every day. And that drinking water will come from the sea. For more on the nation's first desalination plant, here's our Connie Lee.
It's this seawater surrounding Korea's southern coast that's being turned into fresh, drinkable water. Korea now has its very first desalination plant built and ready to go for full operation starting in January. Located in the southern port city of Busan, the $175 million plant can pump in about 100,000 tons of water per day from the ocean and remove the salt and turn it into 45,000 tons of fresh water, enough for about 150,000 residents in the city. This high-tech facility was built by Korea's very own Tusan Heavy Industries and Construction, currently the #1 leader in the desalination plant market.
Our company has been building these plants and working on desalination technology for about 40 years now. We built this one to help expand our overseas market and prepare for future water shortages.
The purified water has been certified as safe to drink by the Busan Water Authority, and the cost for consumers will be the same as fresh water from other sources. So is Korea facing a water shortage? Well, not right now, but potentially yes. According to a recent UN report, by the year 2030, nearly half of the global population will face water shortages due to demand exceeding water supply.
The world is headed towards water shortages. Desalination plants are one way to fight water scarcity. And in the past 2 to 3 years, the number of these plants has grown tenfold.
There are currently more than 16,000 desalination plants worldwide. And in the face of water scarcity, that number is expected to increase in the years to come. Connie Lee, Arirang News, Busan.
Got milk? Well, if you love milk, moderation would be advised apparently. Well, not too long ago, a Swedish researcher warned us that drinking 3 or more cups of milk per day could lead to premature death. Other reports suggest it could cause cancer. Responding to the global alarm bells, nutritionists and doctors appeared at a discussion at the National Assembly on Thursday, where they called for more research on the effects milk really has on the body. They said it could take decades to draw conclusions, but that the support of the government was needed. The experts were also quick to point out, however, that it is safe to drink milk based on the current standards.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather update. Now, there are now cold wave advisories in effect over in Gangwon province, and along with that, it's snowing sporadically over in some regions with a heavy snowfall alert issued for Jeju's mountains and the Jeollabuk-do and Chungcheon-do provinces as well. Now, people there can expect between 5 to 10 more centimeters of snow, whereas the surrounding regions expecting between 2 and 7. Now, tonight's snow is expected to be one of the wet varieties, so be careful on the roads since it could freeze very quickly. And to our weather for the rest of our week, the cold conditions won't stop here. Just by looking at our morning lows for tomorrow, they're expected to be lower than today's, down over to -7 degrees, and things will get even colder over the weekend with lows dipping down to -9, so try to stay indoors if possible and bundle up tight when you are heading outside. And to our readings for tomorrow, so we'll start off the Friday morning at -7 degrees before reaching up to -2 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will be higher at 2 and 5 degrees. And to other regions such as Jeju Island will peak to 6, while Seoul-do hits lower at 1, while Gangneung drops down way at -10 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, we've come to the end of our newscast. Thanks for watching and have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Nai-Hyun Kyung from us and the rest of the team. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.